She sipped the plastic cup with her pinky in the air. Dainty little slurps with her eyebrows raised. Her mascara was caked on her lashes. A wave of lust and antipathy passed through him like a tremor. It gripped him in a manner similar to the reverie he'd had repeatedly about Miss DeLuca, the biology teacher with enormous breasts, and the kind of fullness and sadness to her mouth about whom he fantasized while she lectured on vertebrates. Finally, there was one class where genus and species and so forth were discussed, at the end of which he'd raced out as soon as the bell sounded and sequestered himself in the restroom to madly relieve himself of his need. When he opened his clenched eyes, he was a little stunned and couldn't quite orient himself until he looked down and saw what he had released in the clear water of the toilet bowl. It drifted down like a frozen sculpture or someone falling through the air in slow motion. When he told the story at the wedding, he ended with a line of hers. "Oh, you dear boy, I hope I haven't corrupted you." And everyone laughed and laughed. He was in the midst of explaining the logic he used by which he could claim success at school. "It's like a contest," said Sam. "What does that mean?" she said. "It's like, who can do worse? If you do worse, you win, you know? It's like, I'm very competitive. The winner is the big loser." That's not how I would phrase it. I mean, loser is, yeah, it's not good. Well, the point is, whoever fucked up the most was winning, so you aren't the loser, you're the winner. And needless to say, I'm often winning. If you say so. That's what I'm telling you. That's what we called it, winning, which is, I suppose, fucked up. You curse a lot. It's because I'm jaded and I've seen too much of the world. Whether or not you've seen too much of the world, I will not venture to say, but jaded you are not. I'm not? No. Why do you say that? I don't know. You're not jaded. You're sweet. Thank you. I know you're much older than me, but you make me feel like an old lady. I just mean, older. Okay, I'm definitely older than you, yes. You were going to say something. I forgot. Rats, it sounded like it was going to be a compliment. Well, I was going to say you seem really sweet, too. You were? No, actually, not really. I mean, you are sweet, but sweet is not a word I would usually use unless it's like, the song is sweet or whatever. It's like a girly word, but since you said it, okay, you know what I'm thinking? No, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that you remind me of this girl I go to school with. Oh yeah? What's her name? Vicky. You're kidding? That's my name too. Your name is Vicky? Yes. That is a shocker. That's really weird. I may need another drink to settle my nerves. What's the deal with this other Vicky? Vicky is, I don't know. I kind of like her and I hate her. Wow, I remind you of someone you hate? No, I don't hate Vicky. It's just that she pisses me off, but I also like her. And what pisses you off about her? You sound like my shrink. You see a shrink? A bunch of people in my grade have shrinks. I've been seeing mine for a year. Is there something wrong with you? I don't know, maybe. I mean, what does wrong mean? You're an interesting kid. It was my idea, he said. I told my mother I was underachieving and I thought I should see a therapist. That's very proactive of you, she said. I'm impressed. You were telling me about Vicky. I was reminding you of her. What do we have in common? I don't know. You look alike a little, I guess. Are you into her? You like her? Does she know that? And you said you hated her too? What's the deal with that? She takes a lot of shit. I wish she wouldn't take so much shit. What does that mean? Well, they call her Vicky the Quickie. Who's they? Everyone, my friends, people. She tends to smile and giggle like an idiot and not say anything, and it's not true. She's not a quickie? You use that word very easily. Oh, I don't mean it like that, to pile on. I just mean, you like the girl, don't you? Of course, that's why I'm pissed at her for being such a doormat. Do you ever stand up for her? Stand up for her? What do you mean? Defend her against the people who call her Vicky the Quickie. What's to defend? She sits there smiling like an idiot. And this is the person I remind you of? In a good way. Oh, dear boy, she said, and she reached out and petted his hair. Then out of the blue, she said, I'm going to the bathroom. Want to come? Without thinking, he said, yeah. And he slid into the aisle behind her and walked staring at his shoes, which he followed into the bathroom. In the cramped space, she whispered, sit down. And he did, and looked up at her with fear. She sat down on his lap. Her weight crushed him. She started kissing him, her tongue in his mouth in small lizard licks. The fluorescent lights and the smell made him feel as though some medical procedure was taking place. To say his dick was not growing was an understatement. It was trying to crawl into itself and vanish. She stopped kissing him. For a moment he sat there with his mouth ajar and his eyes closed. He shut his mouth, but took another moment before he opened his eyes. He was afraid of what he would see. He wanted to leave. She stroked his hair, stroked his face, purred into his ears. "You're such a beautiful boy. This is going to be so special." When he opened his eyes, he saw that she was looking at him with this matter-of-fact expression while unbuttoning her blouse. There had been a fullness to her breasts that he had keyed into right away, but it didn't prepare him for the sight of her pale flesh pressing against her bra, and then their forward thrust when she unhooked it. She pushed her breasts into his face. He was suffocating, drinking of them. He was the thirstiest man in the world now, swimming in a pool of clear water, drowning and drinking, and very hard. She pulled down his jeans and then hers and straddled him in the nasty little toilet. "Maybe we should use a condom," he mumbled, and decided that the very effort counted and it would protect him against AIDS. Everything. She put her hand down there, squatted. He was inside her. He thought for a moment it would snap off inside her. It felt huge and something separate from him. He gasped a fearful sound, a sound he might make if he heard the engine of the plane sputter. It was a gross animal sound. She replied with a whimper, tender, a little predatory. His mind raced, contemplating if she would now change dramatically, if this was a trick, some nasty version of candid camera. "Baby, baby, baby," she said. She bounced on him, lightly at first, but she quickly became more forceful. The whole experience began to feel like a water rocket that you pumped, and then pressed the button and it exploded. She crashed down on his lap. He was aware of the smell, the awful bathroom smell, and along with it the lemony and slightly acrid smell of her body, her breasts, one of which he was guiding into his mouth. He thought fleetingly of Vicky, not her face or anything she said, but of the exasperation he felt, and a curious kind of feeling welled up within him to accompany the animal rutting that now consumed him, something along the lines of vengeance. He tried to get a nipple in his mouth, but it was too hectic. There wasn't time. He was being molested. He thought he might sustain an injury. Something enormous was rushing out of him. "Oh, God," she said, as he exploded. She banged up and down extra hard. He made a grunt and a whimper, a bit like the sound his old dog Charlie once made when it got its paw run over. And suddenly a home movie began playing against the dark screen of his tightly shut eyes, the golden lab whimpering loudly as the car eased out of the garage, and then quickly limping away, trotting, walking it off in circles while his mother threw open the door and exclaimed, "Oh, Charlie," almost irritated, like it was the dog's fault. After a few minutes, Charlie stopped whimpering, but he never stopped limping. He opened his eyes, more for the purpose of interrupting this movie than to see where he was. Vicky was tearful again, gazing at him, her tits there between them. "Oh, baby, you are such a beautiful boy," she was saying. "You are too," he said. He didn't know what he meant. He was elated. His thighs hurt. "Oh, God, oh, my beautiful boy, my dear boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy." She laughed. She sniffled. "I hope I haven't corrupted you, my dear, beautiful boy," she said. And she smiled at him apologetically. With that, she stood, grabbed a tissue, and shoved it between her legs. He was afraid he would not be able to stand. His legs seemed useless, damaged. He hoisted himself onto his feet with his arms. His legs were fine. A few moments later, they pushed out of the tiny space. The male flight attendant was standing there, fiddling with a coffee pot. He looked over at them, beaming. "You guys are in big trouble," he whispered. His hair was heavily moussed and had blonde streaks.